This video is sponsored by Motion Array. About a year and a half ago on this channel, I reviewed the DJI Air 3. At the time, I said it was almost the perfect drone, except for a few things. Well, this is the DJI Air 3S, the upgraded version of the Air 3. It makes a number of improvements upon its predecessor, but the question is it enough to shake that almost perfect qualifier? Spoiler alert, it doesn't, for one key reason, but it does get quite a bit closer. Let me explain. Okay, quick disclaimer. DJI did send me the Air 3S to review, but they have no say in what I say and don't get to see this video before you do. All right, so let's first talk about the improvements that DJI have made to the Air 3S and just in general, like the things that I really like about it. Then we can talk about the things that still need some improvement. At a first glance, you might not see much of a difference between these two drones. The body of the drones is roughly the same. They're effectively the same weight. I think the Air 3S is 4 grams heavier, so 274 versus 270. They use the same battery and come with the same case if you're going for the Fly More option. The flight time on the 3S is also basically the same. It's rated at 45 minutes versus 46 on the Air 3, which was pretty much best in class and outperforms even the Mavic 3 Pro by a couple of minutes. Realistically, those benchmarks are set in perfect windless conditions, so actual performance is going to be different based on how you're flying and what conditions you're in. The most I was able to push mine to was around 30 minutes, but I was also mostly launching mine from around 8,000 to 9,000 feet of elevation, which is going to make it much harder on the drone compared to being at sea level, for example. All in, the Air 3S is basically the best flight time you can get, so I'd assume somewhere between 30 and 45 minute range, which is definitely enough for most scenarios. Now, the first major improvement from the Air 3S is that it now has 42 gigabytes of internal storage versus 8 gigabytes on the Air 3. Honestly, for me, 42 gigabytes is almost enough to never really need to bring an SD card, since I'm usually offloading my files every 2 to 3 flights. Mostly though, I think this is just a really nice backup for the inevitable moment when you get into the air and then realize that your card is still at home in your computer. The next major improvement is actually a few things that I'm going to kind of lump together in the bucket of just like general safety. DJI has made a number of improvements to the Air 3S sensors to make it nearly impossible to crash. Nearly. Don't take that as a challenge. On the front of the drone, you'll notice this new sensor bar, which houses the LiDAR system. DJI has been refining their LiDAR technology for a few years now, but this is the first time that we've had it included on a drone. Side note, I'll also have a video coming very soon on this LiDAR rig that I've been using lately, so be sure to subscribe to be notified when that one drops. So this new LiDAR system works with the downward-facing infrared sensors and then the other sensors around the body of the drone to help with optical sensing, especially in low light and night shooting, or if like there's something like glass that might be, confusing for normal sensors. There's also improved return to home along with these new sensors. I've never really trusted return to home on the older DJI drones, but this is absolutely epic now. Rather than just kind of flying a straight path towards the home point, it actually maps out a path back to you and then shows you that flight path that it's going to be taking with this green path on your screen. Like this one time it was actually able to fly up and over a hill of trees that would have normally been in the flight path otherwise. So super hyped on that improvement. Another thing I'm very hyped about is that we've got a new sponsor to the channel, Motion Array. Sponsors are how I get to keep making videos like this for all of you, and I only ever take on sponsors for things I actually use or believe in. Motion Array is basically everything you need to help add some pizzazz to your videos, whether it's motion graphics or stock footage or sound effects. They've got it all. They also just released a new AI voiceover feature that allows you to generate high quality voiceovers by simply inputting text. They have 38 different voices to choose from, and you can adjust the speed and emotion of each voice as well. I've used it for a bunch of client videos, and it also goes really well if you want to just kind of have some fun narrative stuff. Like, here's a quick little video I did using the Air 3S and the FX3 along with the Southern Charm voiceover from Motion Array.
The weather, it's a-changin'. Summer is long gone, and a chill has come over the air. Even the cows know it. Some people say they'll miss the warm days out on the farm. But me, well, I'm looking forward to it.
To make your own, all you gotta do is type in your script, adjust your settings, and hit generate. Super easy. So head over to motionarray.com to try it out for yourself, and a huge thank you to Motion Array for making this video possible. So on this topic of low light that we were talking about before, one of the biggest things that was limiting the Air 3 was the sensor. Both the Air 3 and the Air 3S have a dual camera system, giving you a 24 and 70 millimeter equivalent focal length between the two cameras. On the Air 3, one of the biggest drawbacks was that the main camera was only a 1/1.3 inch sensor, which technically is a bit of a downgrade from the 1-inch sensor that was on the Air 3 or the Air 2S. Although technically the resolution was higher on the Air 3, but whatever. Well, we can now check one of the biggest complaints off the list because the 1-inch sensor is back on the main camera. We're also getting a slight resolution bump from 48 to 50 megapixels on that main sensor. So that 23% increase in sensor size on that main camera, it's definitely noticeable. You get better low light performance, and honestly, I'm quite impressed that you're able to get such a solid image out of a consumer level drone. It's definitely sharper and has more detail without having that overly processed sharpening look that some of the older previous models of drones have. Now, the telephoto sensor is still the same 1/1.3 inch sensor that we had on the Air 3. But that's also the same that you get on the Mavic 3 Pro, so I don't think there's really any room for complaint there. Having that 70 millimeter field of view completely changes your composition. You're able to compress scenes together, making them feel a lot more larger than life, and you can achieve that Hollywood level parallax where you have the background and foreground kind of flying past the subject in different rates. It's awesome. You can also swap into vertical shooting in 2.6K, which makes use of the full height of the sensor and then kind of crops in. So it's kind of doing that open gate type thing that we wish that Sony would do. For vertical photos, you can also do that same thing, but I prefer to do a vertical pano and then stitch it together in post. On that note, it does seem like the dynamic range is improved, which makes sense given, larger sensor. But I still would want to avoid pointing it directly into the sun because, it is still a drone. It's got limits. For photos, I do still like to use AEB bracketing mode to take a 3-image stack and then blend it in post to give me even more dynamic range. Now, I guess while we're on this kind of general downsides topic, we might as well just transition into the things that I would like to see improved. So let's start with that AEB mode that I was talking about. I assume it's due to the slightly larger file size, but as I was shooting, I couldn't help but think that the loading time in between each bracketed photo was painfully long. I tried both using the internal memory and writing to the memory card, and it was still taking about 11 seconds until I was able to take the next bracketed photo. I wanted to test this to see if I was just imagining things, so I did a little side-by-side comparison against the Air 3, and while the Air 3 isn't really all that fast either, it's still much faster than the Air 3S. Maybe this is something that could be fixed with firmware though. Another annoyance with the DJI Air 3 is that we're still limited to D-Log-M rather than the true D-Log picture profile. D-Log-M is kind of a halfway flat color profile. It gives you some added dynamic range and a little bit more flexibility to color grade in post compared to normal or HLG profiles, but it's not that true flat picture profile that you get on the Mavic series drones. This was already the case on the Air 3 and like the Mini 4 Pro, so it's not like we're not used to color grading this picture profile at this point, but I really want that normal D-Log. So while I can get over those kind of more slight downsides pretty easily, there's still one glaring issue with the DJI Air 3, and that is aperture control. Aperture is crucial for managing exposure, like it's part of the exposure triangle, particularly in video mode when your shutter speed should typically be locked because, the 180-degree rule. But the Air 3S is stuck with a fixed aperture of f1.8 on the main camera and f2.8 on the telephoto lens. In truth, I think the 180-degree rule isn't as important for drones since, it's hard to discern motion blur when your subject is like a couple hundred feet away. But you'll probably notice some choppy footage throughout this video, which was because I had to crank the shutter despite having an ND filter on. Now, to DJI's credit, they do include ND filters on the Fly More combo this time, something that was missing on the Air 3. So we do at least have the ability to add some ND into the mix. However, when you've got rapidly changing lighting conditions like golden hour and sunset or just kind of ever, it means eventually you're going to have to adjust your shutter speed. All this is to say that exposure control is still an issue on the Air 3S, and it's honestly the thing that annoys me the most, and the thing that prevents me from giving it this perfect drone title. That said, I do think when we consider the price, perhaps those drawbacks can be overlooked. Now, despite all of the improvements that the Air 3S has made versus the Air 3, it is basically the same price as the original. The base price starts at $1099, which, that's the same price as the Air 3, and the Fly More combo is $1399 for the RC controller that needs to connect to your phone, and $1599 for the DJI RC2, that's the one with the screen. For those keeping score at home, that means that the Fly More combos are each $50 more than they were on the Air 3. But we're also now getting those ND filters, which is nice because previously those were a $99 add-on. And in this economy, we'll take that $50 discount. All in, you're looking at about half the cost of the Mavic 3 Pro, which is incredibly compelling. Do I think you should upgrade if you already own the Air 3? Honestly, probably not. But if you have an older drone, or this is your first drone, and you just really want to upgrade from like a mini model, for example, I think this is a really great combination of image quality, features, flight time, and price. So what do you think? Do you want one? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.